gonna do it that way then. Hi, Mom. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Boosted John's Vlogmas. Now, it has been a while since I've talked about the Civic on the channel, and today just seems like the day. It is pretty cold out, and it's very sunny, so I have put on some warmer clothes. So what could I possibly be doing with the Civic in today's video? Well, by the title, you guys already know, I'm going to be telling all of you guys how I learned to build the motor and do everything that I did on this car. Now, obviously I finished that project like a long time ago, but I'm still getting so many comments on old videos of this car asking how I learned to do this, where I learned to do this, am I self-taught, did I go to school? And today I'm gonna answer all of those questions, all of them. Okay, before we really get into this, I just want to go over the build really quick for those of you that are new here watching this video. And I want to refer you to some of my old videos. If you're interested in seeing this setup come together or be torn apart, engine bay painted or transmission cleaned or whatever, if you want to see any step of this process, there is an entire playlist. I'll put it right up here somewhere. It'll be up at the top. Also, I have a link to it in the description down below if you want to click it at the end of this video and go check out those videos. The engine disassembly video for this project and the engine assembly videos did extremely well, like hundreds of thousands of views on my channel, some of my most successful videos to date. So if you're new here, go check those out. You're gonna absolutely love them. Anyway, what is this build? This is a B18B bottom end, so it's the Honda LS bottom end, LS crankshaft, Wiseco pistons, Manley rods, ACL race bearings. It's kind of the standard bottom end build, but the one thing that I have on this thing that's a little bit spicy is the CSS. I have cylinder support system on this bottom end. So the bottom end can handle quite a bit of power. It's a JDM B16 head, stock B16 cams, which are kind of sus. SuperTech valves, Brian Crower springs and retainers. It's got the works. It's a built motor, it's got the works. eBay turbo kit, fender exit exhaust, stock intake manifold, top mount turbo manifold, and so then therefore this motor is an LS VTEC motor, LS bottom end with a VTEC head. It's a really fun setup. It's torquey on the bottom end for a B series motor, and then it also has the top end because of VTEC and the turbo. It's very fun. So like I said, if you want to see any part of this process, please go check out the videos in the description or up here. All right, now before I start talking about this car and this build and how this whole thing went down, I have to go get one very, very important thing for later. I'll be right back. This right here is my notebook. We're gonna come back to this in a little bit, but this is going to be like the #1 most important thing for how I did this build pretty much. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. All right, so a lot of your questions are basically like, where did I learn how to do this? What, like, how did I go to school? What was it that kind of taught me to be able to do all this? And I'm gonna be really quick with these answers. No, I did not go to school for this. Growing up, my dad was a general contractor, so he taught me a ton about just working in general, mechanical things, and also he did do quite a bit of work on his own cars, and he would almost always have me help him. My dad taught me a lot of stuff growing up. Next big thing, my autos class. My autos class in high school was huge. I went straight from being in autos 1 to autos 4 just because of my own personal background with helping my dad and stuff. So I took autos 1 my freshman year, and then I didn't take any more autos classes until senior year of high school. And I opted straight into the autos 4 just because of what I had been doing in my spare time. One of those things being repainting and doing a bunch of body work on a pickup truck going into my senior year of high school with my dad. In my autos class, I rebuilt the entire suspension on that truck. That taught me a lot. My autos teacher was awesome, and he just got me super into cars. Like, I don't know what it was about his class, but he just basically like made me love doing this. I also started messing around with RC cars and dirt bikes and airsoft guns like pretty early on, like in middle school, early high school. I was doing RC car stuff, so I would like get a Traxxas RC car that went 80 miles per hour, and I'd crash into a tree as hard as I could by accident or into a mailbox, and it exploded to a million pieces, and then I'd have to put it back together. Same thing with airsoft guns. I was constantly trying to modify them to make them more accurate. Honestly, there's no point in modifying airsoft guns other than aesthetics. So I don't know why I was doing that, but I did. And that got me really into like the mechanical side of things, and like if something would break, I'd fix it. And that brings us to my first enthusiast car ever. I'm 19 years old. I'm driving past a Honda dealership and I see a 2007 Honda Civic Si Coupe. It was red, otherwise known as the FG2. I bought it for $4,000 cash plus a trade-in of a really old Jetta, and I love that car. I had always wanted one. Ever since playing Forza Motorsport 4 back in the day, I always wanted an FG2, and I finally had one. And I decided it was time to start my YouTube channel. That I did, and I started modifying the car just ever so slightly. You know, I did some repairs. I changed like an O2 sensor. I did some lowered springs, wheels, tires, change shifter bushings, just like super little stuff. I didn't have any grasp on anything like this then, at all, nothing. This was so scary to me, but it's just the fact that I started small. When I got that car, I drove out to a shop called Toge Factory out here in Illinois. They told me they didn't really do any Honda stuff at the time, but they recommended me to another shop called 16 Motorsports. 16 Motorsports is owned by a guy named Mark. You've seen Mark on the channel before. You've seen me partner with 16 Motorsports for some videos, actually some things with this car. And basically just, I went to him with that red FG2 and I just kept going back to him. Every time I needed parts or anytime I needed advice, I'd go back to him and I'd ask him questions. He'd tell me the right thing. I'd put it on the car. I'd do it a certain way. And so he knew what I was about. He knew that I liked making YouTube videos. He knew that I liked working on cars, and he was very friendly to me. And anytime I had a question, he'd always give me the best advice he possibly could. So that is what leads me to my first point of advice to you guys, is finding someone in your life who you know who has actual real life experience with a specific chassis and setup that you're trying to work on, and asking them as many questions as they are willing to answer, because you are going to have a lot. So anyway, I eventually sell the red SI. I bought a Mustang, didn't like it, sold that a couple months later, and I bought this EG right here. It was naturally aspirated at the time. It had a non-VTEC B18B, so that's the Acura or Honda LS motor, whatever. And I bought a turbo kit for it right after that. I met Caleb, aka Gentium. We installed the turbo kit out at his shop. We got to the dyno and made 225 wheel horsepower. Anyway, I drove the car for a little while. It had some issues. A few things started to fail and it just wasn't feeling right anymore. And last winter, actually almost a year to this day, I pulled the motor out of this car. Now you might be asking yourself, how did you know how to pull this motor? Well, that's a good question. And my advice to you guys is, if you guys have any friends or you know anyone that is going to be pulling a motor or doing some kind of big job like dropping a transmission or something, go help them. Like, just drop what you're doing, go help them if you want to learn. Because I helped my friend Sam pull a Honda motor out of his Integra and install a B20 Honda motor into his Integra only a couple months before doing this. And that made this process so much easier, just because I had seen it before. That was my first time ever pulling a motor, was with Sam a little bit before I did this. And it made this process so nice and so easy. Anyway, that brings us to the notebook. This notebook, I pretty much owe this entire build to. If you guys are starting something like this, go get yourself a notebook, write something on it that designates it as your car build notebook, and put everything in here. Scratch a Google Doc, scratch a spreadsheet. Don't do that, because that takes extra steps to get to it. Get yourself a notebook, keep a pen inside of it, and whatever you think of, whatever you learn that you think you're gonna forget, anything that you can possibly think of that is going to help your build process, write it in here. This is literally day one. This is before we pulled the motor on this car, actually. Check this out. If you want to pause it, go for it. You can read my notes. I had Kearney write these for me because my handwriting sucks. But this is what I, at the time, had thought through and planned out. I just wrote down all of the steps that I'm gonna need to do from going from, pretend the old motor is in here, going from old motor to exactly what you see right now. This is everything that I could have possibly thought of, just written onto a sheet of paper. As soon as you write down the order that you think you're gonna take, you'll probably start to change things a little bit along the way, and that's totally fine. But just staying on top of your list and making sure that you are hitting all these points while you're working on the car is huge. Again, I'll show it to you one more time. Feel free to pause the screen if you want and take a read. I hope you guys can see it. Basically, the subsequent pages of this notebook are just me writing notes. If I had a question and I asked Mark, I'd write down the question and I'd write down what his answer was. If I had a question and I found it in a forum, I would write down the question, I'd write down what the answer is. Everything. Like, I just was so thorough with notes and research. I wrote down exactly what parts I was gonna need and what order I was gonna have to remove parts and install those parts. Basically, like, this entire build did not happen overnight. It looks like that because of YouTube, right? Like, there's literally one video that's like disassembling this engine, and then there's one video that's like assembling this engine, and then the next video is the dyno day. But that was like 8 months of working on this car. And you know, there are some smaller videos in between. Some of those are good, some of them I'm not very proud of. But like, the major videos from this build, there's only like 3 of them. But that was 8 months of content. Of those 8 months of working, I would say I spent at least 2 or 3 months planning. A lot of it was also spent waiting on parts because of COVID, so it could have gone quicker, but I'm glad it went at the pace it did because it worked out really well. So far, find people you can ask questions to. If you find someone who is doing a project similar to this on their car, just go help them for free. Get the knowledge, get the experience, and also get yourself a notebook and start doing some research and start planning. Watch a ton of YouTube videos, Whatever you sit there and you're like, I don't know how to do this one thing, it's stressing me out. Google it immediately. Stop what you're doing, Google it. Like, it's just gonna keep freaking you out until you figure it out. Yeah, guys, I just gotta say, like, this is literally just pages and pages and pages of notes. Like, I probably have like 30 pages full of notes. All right, now you've done your planning, you've done your research, you've talked to people, asked questions, you've gotten some experience from working on somebody else's car, you've got all your notes, and you're ready to start the project. But you don't have an engine hoist, and you don't have an engine stand. All right, now you've got a couple options here. You can either borrow a hoist from a friend or someone that you know who has one, or you can try to rent one somewhere. I don't really know how that works. Or you can buy one from Harbor Freight. They're a little bit expensive. You know, I think they're like $200 or $300 or something like that. I borrowed one from my neighbor, so that was super helpful. And then you need an engine stand. Those are actually pretty affordable from Harbor Freight. I think I got mine for like $60 or something. After you have that stuff and you just have your basic tools that you're gonna need, it's just purely execution. It's just coming out here and getting your hands dirty. Start taking apart what you know, and you'll work your way towards the stuff that you don't know. If you get stuck, go sit down, take a breath, get a drink of water, and research the forums or go on YouTube and watch a video. So guys, this has been an absolute rant. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something. And seriously, like, I'm not some guy who knows a lot of things. Like, there are a lot of things on this build that I overlooked and I wish I did differently. But that is just how you have to learn. You have to just stop being so scared to make a mistake, go out there and make those mistakes, and you're just gonna learn from doing. After I finished this build, I was so bummed with how much money I spent on it. If you wanna know how much money I spent on it, again, video up top somewhere. But I was so bummed about how much money I spent, and looking back on it, like, I learned so much from this build. The money I spent was well worth it. Well worth it. I learned so much. But I also run a YouTube channel. A lot of you guys don't. This is like what I do to try to make a living, so don't force an engine build on yourself. Like, only do it if it's something you really want to do. So yeah, that is my spiel. Thank you guys for listening. Again, I hope you learned something new. If you like this video and or learned something new, please leave a thumbs up. The likes really help. Also, if you like this video, please click that subscribe button, because the Civic is gonna be coming back at some point. I don't know when, because I just picked up literally 2 new projects. One of those is gonna be going at some point, but this one's not going anywhere. So if you guys wanna see this stuff, it'll be back on the channel at some point. Thank you guys for watching. As I always say, let's plan, commit, execute, and attain our goals. Bye.